Hello everyone, welcome to the 15th event of BA Slash. I'm Monte, a management consultant at BA Systems Applied Intelligence. I'm currently on a sabbatical leave to help the Good Lab, an NGO specialized in co-creation between civic society and the government in Hong Kong. And it's really great that I can apply my experience on their communication and digital strategies. If you are new to BA Slash, a big welcome to you. I started the BA Slash community at the start of COVID. The aim is to connect people with different expertise and insights for the evolving needs of the market. We also have Marianne and Pam as the co-hosts. Let's get them introduce themselves. Pam, would you like to go first?
Hello, my name's Paminda Bhopal, and I have been probably joined the BA Slash community sort of earlier this year. I'm a consultant. I'm currently working for an energy provider, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more about Gantt Charts this evening. I was just recording with Adam earlier about how my days back at university the subject was first introduced. So just keen to learn what are the alternatives and have we really moved on.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, welcome to BA Slash. My name is Marianne Sears. I joined the BA Slash probably in the first year, probably looking for something to join a BA community, really. And I think I probably joined them in one of their first sessions. I've been working as a BA for over 10 years. Currently, I'm working in the Agile space. So yes, deaf to Gantt Charts. Gantt Charts actually do have their place, I'm sure, but I'm still interested to hear about alternatives and tips and tricks on using Gantt Charts. So everyone, welcome this evening. I hope you enjoy this session too. Thank you.
Amazing, thanks both. If you like BA Slash, what we do, please spread the word with your contacts, tweet us, follow us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Every post and tweets that you make us go further. Great, and actually today is Mid-Autumn Festival. It's a type of harvest Thanksgiving festival in East and Southeast Asia. And usually families gather to appreciate the full moon and the lantern display. So this picture, I took it last Friday in a very small fishing village that runs a display of 3,000 handmade lanterns, and they're really gorgeous, aren't they? And I think for yourself tonight, if you have got a moment, do try to observe the sky as well. You should be able to see a big full moon in front of you. So yeah. Just a few housekeeping notes. You will receive the slides and recording of the section in a couple of days. I know that sometimes we got a little bit of delay of sending that out, but please join us as volunteers because it's purely because of our capacity, like in the voluntary team here. So yeah, do help us. But yeah, but you definitely receive them. And currently your line is muted because we are doing a recording. But feel free to unmute your line in the Q&A later. You can also put your questions in the chat box because Marianne will be collating and ask the questions towards the end. And last but not least, you're very welcome to stay behind for some breakout discussions on the topic of Gantt chart or anything else, or quiz me about the legends related to the Mid-Autumn Festival. I read Wiki earlier, so I'm prepared. Okay. And last time I invited lots of you to share your project stories and learning. And this invitation is still open. BA Slash is catered for speakers of a wide spectrum of presentation experience because we believe everyone has some insights to share regardless the stage of your career. You can always make the biggest impact to shape the BA Slash community by becoming an organizer, sharing our events, recording with your network, subscribe to BA Slash, our social media channels and all sorts. And Marianne is sharing the email address in the chat box, so do drop us a line to bounce ideas as well. And also towards the end, because we always want to enhance our event. So do fill in the 1-minute survey that we have created, and Marion is putting all these links in the chat box for you right now. And yeah, and today is my real pleasure to invite Adam to the event. So I met Adam a few years back in a Guildford-based meetup group called Keep Agile. It's a real quality group there. They also host some Scrum Master clinics and all this. And obviously, Adam and I had some really good in-depth quality discussions on delivery excellence, the team dynamics and career development when we met in this meetup group. And I thought these engagements with Adam were really positive and memorable. And I wanted to replicate these experiences for the BA/community by having Adam here today. So without further ado, I'll let Adam to go onto the virtual stage, and we can give him maybe a virtual round of applause too. Thanks, Adam.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I remember that meeting well at Keep Agile, which is the Keep in Guildford, and just talking about what we talk about and what we do at work. So thank you very much for that very nice intro, Monique. I think the first thing I'm going to ask people to do before I do any slides is if you can just quickly go to this bit.ly link. I'm going to share my screen and show what you'll see there. This will stop the other screen sharing. Yes, I do want to do that. So you should see two very simple questions. Have you seen a Gantt chart in the last year is the first one. And the second one is, let me just start it. You'll get 2 votes, one for the first question, one for the second. The second question is, have you seen an accurate Gantt chart in the last year? So I'll just leave until I get a few votes in there. So we've got 10 people voting. I'm not going to vote. So once I see that that's gone down, look at all these visiting penguins and snails and rabbits and raccoons and seahorses. Oh, there's loads of people who have voted. Let's get this to 10 and then I will end the voting session. Yeah, okay. So we're ending it for everybody. Sorry if you didn't get to vote. Now I see the problem. But we've got ways of doing this. So have you seen a Gantt chart in the last year? 10 say yes, 3 say no. Have you seen an accurate Gantt chart in the last year? We do have 1 person. So whoever that person is, make yourselves known, because we would love to speak to you about how you achieved the accuracy of your Gantt chart. I think I've probably laid my cards out here. You might notice that I'm not really a fan of Gantt charts. That's my secret. So the trouble with Gantt charts, this is me, I'm Adam Hall, I'm an Agile coach and a waste reducer. Waste reduction is about reducing plastics that we use, single-use plastics, not very good. It's also about those things that we do at work which serve no purpose. For example, maintaining a Gantt chart. I'm passionate about creating elite Agile teams who have fun working together, fun being the operative word. And to date, this year, I have upskilled over 600 people, which I'm very proud about. That means I'm an expert facilitator. If I say it, it's true. So even if I don't feel it yet, I'm an expert facilitator. That's all you need to know. And I am the co-founder of another meetup called Agile Reading. If you're curious, just type it into meetup.com and you can find out more. So yes, I did say I have a secret, and my secret is I hate Gantt charts. I hate the way they look. I hate what they do to people who look at them. And I hate the time that it takes to build one. I mean, if you've ever had to witness a Gantt chart like that, I'm sorry. So yes, you know, waterfall, anyone? Think back to the last Gantt chart you saw, and it probably looks like a sprawl of boxes that, well, this is where we talk about the word resources, where resources are happily delivering the work packages of the set schedules. It doesn't make me happy. So Gantt charts are so fixed in their mindset, I think we should just frame them on the wall, because I don't know if you've experienced this, but people do tend to screenshot these things and share them around slide decks, and they live much longer than they're supposed to. It gives the veneer of reliable objectivity. So yes, while life shifts around the Gantt chart, the Gantt charts doesn't move. So unless you are feeding it and updating it over time, so Marianne said earlier about making sure your Gantt charts are up to date, you have to feed them to actually get them to be accurate. Yeah, so I'm going to move on to this. Do you know what this is? This is that project manager who is updating the Gantt chart for the weekly project update meeting. Let's go and see what that actually entails. Ah, yes, we're dragging all of the boxes out because things are taking longer than they actually do on a Gantt chart. It turns out there's a fundamental problem with reality because it gets in the way of what the ideal world could be. So in reality, full days take longer than they need to. Work morphs, it flexes, things are discovered. Sorry, I'm just going to take a water. So just like me talking now, I need to breathe. You need to have moments to pause to go through Gantt charts. So anyway, people go on holiday, communication breaks down, and this has implications on the plan, and it causes the project to slip away. Okay, I'm going to ask the group, the audience here, does anyone know what deadlines are? Does anyone go on, jump in?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. So as in, you know what they are in project management or in real life, like?
Well, yeah, hi, video from me. Well, both in project management and in real life, depending on situation, both can be tricky.
Yes, exactly. So at project level, they mean it's a date, the due date, the time we get to play with all that, the good stuff. Unfortunately, deadline comes from the Civil War in the US, and it refers to a visual boundary around a prison. And if the prisoner crossed over this line, they'd be shot on sight. And we put projects to indicate the same idea, whether the punishment for actually crossing your deadlines results in the same punishment really depends on the company that you're working for right now. Anyway, so it's rarely such a clean death. I've seen, projects limping across this deadline, asking for more funding and slowly being starved of it, because what the stakeholder really wants to do is get an update and understand exactly when it's going to be delivered. And it sort of starves the project in these final stages. So yeah, in a world where deadlines cease to be a concern, I turn to my favorite author on the subject. I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make as they fly by. So it just goes to show that when you're working in organizations where deadlines don't really mean anything, they're just a date, it ceases to be a problem, and therefore people just let things roll over. So if we lived in a world where projects were actually killed for passing that deadline, maybe Gantt charts would serve a better purpose. Another one, what's a milestone? In project management, we tend to say, okay, this is a thing that happens on this date. It's very much date-based. So the 4th of December, that's going to be the milestone. But milestones are not a measure of time. They're a measure of distance. Through milestones, we can actually calculate time. But there's a slide on that later. Gantt charts use milestones to say time. And usually it's that time when you have to enter a meeting with a stakeholder to apologize for a late delivery, promising that next quarter will, for some reason, be better. Because it's all the hard stuff is always done at the beginning, isn't it? And it's that next quarter, that's going to be the easy stuff. I don't know if other people have felt that. Another thing I hate about Gantt charts is parallelizing the work. So task, let's do them in parallel. And it seems so easy when you look at a Gantt chart. It's just have a box and have another box below it. That's right. Yeah. Well, what is parallel? A parallel line is two lines which never meet. And sadly, I think a lot of parallelization efforts in organizations also suffer the same fate. Anyway, we're going to talk about the useful information on this chart. There is a little bit of useful information on the right-hand side, but there's 25% of the chart is taken up with these labels of the work that should be going on. There's another 15% dedicated to resource, or the teams that are actually working on them. And then you've got this 60% of the chart, which should be really useful. Like the main body of the chart is there. But actually, when you look at it, only 8% of that is useful information. And the rest, well, I'm not going to use my words. I'm going to use the great Edward Tufte, who wrote the visual display of quantitative information. And he says, for these charts, the main visual statement is the administrative grid prison, not the actual task contained by the grid. And we've heard the word prison somewhere before, haven't we? It's all coming together, isn't it? Anyway, stop, Adam, you're waffling. What we really think about Gantt charts, it's just a tool, isn't it? Well, yes, okay, Gantt charts, they're a tool, but it's a tool that, in my opinion, is very misused. It's a way of understanding a scenario for the future, but it is used to show the only scenario for the future. My main concern around Gantt charts is the behaviors it stimulates in leadership teams. It's wrong to think that Gantt charts are simply marred by bad practice. In fact, the problem is the way we look and interact with them encourages the bad practice. Even if you have the best intentions, a Gantt chart will try its best to undermine you. You know, just by leaving it static, it shows that things are going okay. But as time moves forward, it is becoming more and more inaccurate, if things are changing, that is, in the project. I've seen project managers shorten things on charts to fit things in without checking with the teams. Re-estimating other people's forecasts is a very dangerous behavior. How do you tell if the forecast has been agreed by the team? You can't. That's the problem with Gantt charts. I've also seen project managers move work items from one team to another without changing the actual effort. And how do you know if the next team has actually reforecasted the effort? Once again, you can't. The thing about Gantt charts is it makes it look like these behaviors are just simple things of dragging and dropping, when in reality, they have cascading layers of problems rippling out from it. So another example is just people moving things backwards on the Gantt chart, you know, putting it further in the future. It seems like a plausible thing. We can't start this week, so we'll start next week. But they don't take into account team member holidays, Christmas breaks, pandemics happening. An estimate may have been made with these factors in mind originally, but actually just moving it on the sheet, you can't tell if it's actually taken in those insights before. All of these behaviors are unforgivable. Yet, to the people who are doing them, doing that planning Tetris, it feels like they're productivity gurus. Just moving the boxes around feels like real action. But in reality, we're causing alienation in the teams, causing stress, it's tension, and it spreads mistrust. Anyway, we'll come back to these things later. Next, we will look at the person who actually invented Gantt charts. He said, the general policy of the past has been to drive, but the era of force must give way to the era of knowledge, and the policy of the future will be to teach and lead to the advantage of all concerned. So that was Henry Gantt himself in 1910. And I read that quote and I look at the Taylorism that's happening around Gantt charts, and I just think it's incongruous. It doesn't seem to be the way he was originally intending it. So I might be so bold as to say, in today's world, he would say, use data, not dates. And somebody else said that more recently as well. Anyway, so I hope I've persuaded you that Gantt charts are bad and given you some tools to actually help articulate it in your organizations. But what's the alternative? So, simple one here. What is happening now is very important to the teams who are doing it. What is happening next is very important to understand what we need to prepare to pick up the next work items. And what is happening later allows us to have a vision, a sort of broad strategy that we can actually work towards. I've also seen teams work on the roadmap diagram like this in a more flexible style. And what's quite nice about this is now is a couple of weeks. Next is a month or so, and then later is multiple months. So actually the amount of work that you'd expect in those later elements to be more so, hopefully. So, you know, that's a good way to visualize it. But of course, we got a message from our sponsor in the organization, and that is, how long is it going to take? And our roadmap diagram from earlier isn't going to tell us that. Well, there are tools to help us understand that. So here we go. This is a network diagram, and it's very simple. All it says is the dependencies between the different work items. And on this, we say how many days are remaining on the work items to the best of our knowledge. And actually, what's good about this is it doesn't tell us when Christmas is, when there's a holiday, when there's a big all hands day with the company. It doesn't tell us these things because it doesn't need to know. We need to know, and we need to formulate how big it is. The key with this is actually you can see the critical path to delivery, and that is this line here, because we need to take 4 days, and then we need to take 11 days, and then we need to take another 4 days before we can do this final 9-day activity. So it actually takes a little bit of thought to actually find out how long it's going to take. But on a daily basis, these can grow and shrink. And that's the fundamental good thing about network diagrams or PERT diagrams. A more advanced one may also have predictions for the movement in between tasks. So in this one, it shows that. And even more in-depth PERT diagrams can have like possible earliest start date, possible latest start date, those sort of things, and also a status update of, are we actually responsible for this work, or is it another team that we're depending on? So there's PERT diagrams. If you want to look at PERT diagrams, they're an interesting take on actually looking at the dependencies between tasks. And yes, occasionally they can look more like waterfall, but I think they can be annotated much better than Gantt charts. But once again, our stakeholders looking at us and going, that's quite hard to calculate. How long is it going to take? Okay, I've got another one for you then. This one, and this one's so simple, it can be used by a child. Now, over the pandemic last year, my 7-year-old at the time was very frustrated that he wasn't going to get to level 100 on Fortnite before the season ends. So I drew a diagram and I said, okay, to the best of our knowledge, the season ends around late November, early December. Today, he is on this level. And the more he plays, the quicker he gets through to get to level 100. If he doesn't play, like on this day, that's fine. It just means he might not make it. So is he going to make it on time? I don't know. And this is the problem with trying to predict the future. Nobody actually knows. But you can have a good guess, and you can see how much work you need to apply to get yourself closer to the goal. Here's a real life example. Oh no, this is just showing the different things. So you can add work to a burn up chart as it's going along, and that's okay. It just means it moves the estimate out. You can also remove work, happy days. So here's a real life example of burn up chart that was run in Jira, which of course everybody uses Jira because that is Agile. But what's quite interesting with this is The scope suddenly added as it was realized that there was a lot of testing effort that needed to be done in this particular project. And then it was removed again because people didn't want that to look bad on the burn up. And then people realized and went, no, 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 we really do want that testing effort in there. It is stuff that needs to be done before the thing can go live. So if this truly is the release date, you need to predict using the testing efforts. So I thought that was a very nice way to show how JIRA and how burn-up charts can help you articulate the story and make sure that what your assumptions are true. Here's an even nicer one. So this uses data exported from JIRA, but can use various other things. And what this does is it does a Monte Carlo estimation based on all of the work packages that have been done to date. It tries to say, okay, some of them are done really quickly, some of them are done slowly. It does 1,000 variations of the task, and it tells you with, at 75% accuracy, it reckons it will be delivered on the 15th of September. So I'm going to ask the group, when do you think this project actually got delivered? So this is real data from a project I was working with. And we made our first estimate on delivery date in June. Go on, hazard a guess, throw it in the chat. November, I'm hearing. Interesting. September, yeah. So
someone says it's still going now, Adam.
Okay, still going now.
We've got October the 20th, I think, as well. So
interestingly, they were sure that it would be going live at the very end of August, and it went live on the 14th of September. So despite all of the efforts for the Gantt chart, it couldn't get the project over the line at the right time. However, the reality of the burn-up forecast turned out to be incredibly accurate. One day off. So it just goes to show, use burn-ups if you're trying to estimate time. So hopefully we have solved the problem of how long is it going to take. And I think one of the problems with this is it's normally going to take slightly longer than you think it is. And using things like burn-ups and engaging teams in discussions around the network diagrams helps us actually work on these big projects. But it does make me want to go back to why we use these two tools in the first place. I mean, these tools are useful, and I know that organizations swear by Gantt charts. And typically, the fundamental flaw is it encourages long projects and infrequent deliveries. A company that has a team that releases real value every 2 weeks or sooner is not going to invest the cognitive load into delicately balancing their resources against the shortest possible path to get all the features. Instead, they're going to aggressively identify the next most important small release and ruthlessly push anything slowing down the delivery out of the way so they can deliver the next increment. So it goes back to this question, which is, how do you eat an elephant? And the joke is, it's one bite at a time. And I disagree. I think how you eat an elephant is, why are we eating an elephant? We don't need to eat elephants. And I think that's the agile mindset. If you can get away from elephant eating and focus more on delivering good things for our customers, you're going to be in a happier world. That's the happy world I want to see. Cool. That's it. So I will turn, ouch, poor elephant. So I'll turn to the chat. Is there any questions?
We haven't had any questions, but we did have a comment.
Cool,
about,
yes.
That there was another issue with Gantt charts, which is the frequent habit of hiding contingency within items in the belief that it can't be taken away if it's invisible. And then because of the law of physics that says work expands to fill the available time, means that contingency gets used up even if it's not needed.
Yes, in fact, there's I think it's Hofheimer's law. I can't remember his name, but that law states that a project will take longer than you originally estimated, even when you include Hofheimer's law. So it's a nice recursive one, which basically means it's always going to be late. It's always going to be late.
There's a question here. Project Alpha is a greenfield project. The company and the team have no statistics against which to calculate a burnout. On the day the project is launched, the sponsor asks, how long will it take? So what's the route to the best answer in that scenario?
So I think the uncomfortable truth is nobody knows. But yes, you can have your Gantt chart and that presents one scenario. That's all it can do. So I think until you've created some work items and done some of the burning up, I would say 2 weeks is probably the minimum you'd need. So the question for Project Alpha is, what can you release in the first 2 weeks that would be in some way useful? And it could be 2 weeks of discovery. It could be 2 weeks of user research using, scribbles on a piece of paper and showing them, paper airplane versions of what you're going to build. But if you can get into the mindset of something of value in 2 weeks, then the project sponsor isn't going to be too worried, because they're going to have a nice thing in 2 weeks, if you can get there.
I have a similar related question. I'm not overly familiar with Monte Carlo, although I vaguely understand the principles of it. I'm using a burn up at the moment with the client I'm working with, and it gives us a reasonable forecast of when we'd be looking to complete all of the scope of the project. And we essentially started with a discovery phase. We roughly planned out our scope for the whole of the project, and then did a magic estimation on the full scope. And then we did it again sort of halfway through the project to update our forecast. Yeah. But that's entirely dependent, the sort of accuracy and value of that is entirely dependent on how well we understand the scope at each stage that we do that estimation. So with the Monte Carlo technique and that screenshot that you showed, what are the inputs to the forecast beyond today?
So the inputs is basically the backlog. So that particular Monte Carlo estimation technique only allows the number of stories. I believe you can make ones that also then take in a nice, story point value or size if you've got t-shirt sizes. Mm-hmm. So you could create one. Another interesting chart to look at would actually be to look at historical data of all of your different story point values, so small, medium, and large, or 2, 3, 5, 7. And put them on a 2-line axis, which is, one is the amount of time it takes to deliver something, and the other one being the story point values. It's quite interesting because historically, a lot of teams feel that estimation is very useful, but when you plot them on those charts, you get some tiny stories which take weeks and weeks, and some massive stories which take a day. And if I knew why that happened, I'd definitely be a smarter person than I am now. But I think the problem is estimating is hard. So once the project is above a particular size, and the one that I showed that was released in September, it wasn't that big. Ooh, there we go. So we're talking 250 stories in the backlog, but that they included things like make the text green, as well as architect the iOS version. So sometimes it seems crazy that those are comparable, but they are, because it works in real life. When
Yeah,
you've got 250 of
law
them.
of averages. Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So ultimately, you need your backlog still to feed into that, and
Yes.
I guess you update that over time as your backlog evolves, and
Yeah.
the forecast changes accordingly.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Can I just add something to that conversation?
Yeah.
That cycle time versus story point chart is really powerful. I've used that with a client a little while ago, who were resistant to changing anything at all, to show them how their story points, whilst it made them feel secure in their estimates, wasn't really adding any value, and moving to forecasting would be more effective. And what the chart showed was, I just did exactly what you just described, Adam, plotted story points against cycle time, and it showed things like, a 3-point story took anything from 2 to 20 days.
Yeah.
So that's not a useful, you can't have useful conversations about when is it going to be delivered with that. So that one simple chart really made a difference in the client being really keen to go and try some forecasting with real data.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So find a simple way of saying, actually, don't worry about story points. Don't worry about t-shirt sizes. I think it's still useful to predict in the future. So basically, you want to know, you've got two things. Is this thing bigger than this thing? Because that might actually change the order in which I want to do them. That's what it's useful for.
Yeah. The other thing, or the main thing I found story points useful for is kind of at a team level, is surfacing that actually all the team members had a different understanding of the complexity of the piece of work.
Yes.
Which meant we didn't all understand what we were doing. It's quite useful that way.
We have a question here. What is the best way to factor in contingency for a project to facilitate estimation?
So I'm just trying to, Hofheimer's law or whatever. I really should get the right name, otherwise that particular law is going to be annoying. When we try to factor in contingency, there are laws that state it fills the contingency anyway. But there's also other project managers who then look at that and reverse it and say, okay, well, if we stick a deadline on it, then it's more likely to be delivered thereabouts or a few weeks after. So it's very difficult when you start getting into these ideas of trying to hide work in contingency. Try to be honest about what you think is the actual amount of time left, and then daily update those days left. So going back to the network diagram, which was this one, if this is 4 days and the next day it's 3 days and the next day it's 2 days, then the final day it should be 1 day. But if you are constantly updating this chart and you're actually adding days rather than removing days, then effectively you've got a kind of hump. So Basecamp do this interesting thing where they plot a little hump and they say, is the project well known? It's basically how well discovered it is. And when you get to the very peak of the hump, that means that you're kind of finalizing all the work inside. So things don't tend to grow when you get to the top of this discovery hurdle, and things start to get easier. So actually, what you might see when you're using diagrams like this is it stays at 4 days for ages, and then it grows a little bit, and then it starts to shrink. And it's the moment that the team feels comfortable enough to shrink the days that you're actually past the point of the unknowns and you're getting on to the real, the finalization effort of the work. So how do you factor it? Parkinson's law. Okay, so how do you factor contingency? I would say don't. Try to be as honest as you can be. And then when things start to go bad, just explain. Like, it's so much easier to say when things are going bad if you are habitually doing it. And yes, taking it back to Douglas Adams and the deadline dates, if it's a deadline date and nobody cares, then it ceases to be it doesn't serve any purpose. So what is most useful is trying to deliver something of value every 2 weeks, because if you do that, then nobody's going to be on your back because you're doing valuable things all the time. There we go, Hofstadter's law. Phil, do you want to read it out? Just so I don't go to a wiki thing that's been...
Yeah, no worries. You were right. It always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law.
There you go.
I'll also own up to being the person who has seen an accurate Gantt chart.
Oh, well done, Phil.
But I will also say the only reason was it was a very mission critical process with lots of organizations delivering, and they had to be completely aligned because each organization was dependent upon every other organization delivering to their specific timeline and their interactions. And if any one of them slipped, it would have been completely chaos. So it was actually more about ensuring people delivered on time and managing the expectations rather than it being a bottom up. These are all the activities that have to be done. It was a Gantt chart for coordination rather than a Gantt chart to manage the actual activity.
Okay, and it had dates in it
Oh,
to
yes.
do that. Yeah, okay.
Very specific dates, and there was financial penalties for anybody who missed their particular date that were quite severe.
So things got done because there was it's basically a deadline.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get shot with a nice big
Basically,
invoice.
I'm under NDA, so I can't explain it brilliantly. But if I was to say, it was the equivalent of replacing a railway track in a major thoroughfare, a major train station, where they had to do the signalling, the platforms, the track laying, and also bringing new power supplies in. And they had a massive Gantt chart to record who did what and when. And you couldn't do it out of sync. And it was planned 3 years out.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And yeah, it's sort of the area I would be in fear of myself. But so it would, yeah, I'm impressed. Sounds fun. I just seen Martin has asked about which Jira plugin I've used for the Monte Carlo estimation. So there are Excel documents that you can download and upload a sort of CSV file. The one that I use is actually used by Deloitte Digital, and it's called Jira Agile Metrics. There are others available. I feel like I need to say that because I watch lots of BBC, and in the BBC in the UK, we're not allowed to advertise one thing. I don't know why.
We have another comment from Gary. In my opinion, contingency is about helping us to manage uncertainty, as all uncertainty is connected to risk. The best way to factor contingency is to link it directly and visibly to the risks. Identify the tasks that have risk and then add in extra tasks to cater for that risk, i.e. the risk response. Then the risk response is then estimated like any other task, and it can be justified to leadership who may otherwise be inclined to challenge it if it's added as a block at the end, which can be a common way of adding contingency.
Cool. Yeah, so I completely agree with Gary that the problem here we're trying to articulate is some things are more certain than others. That's good. So once you've dispelled it to that, it's risk, you know. So how certain are we that this thing is going to take time? And I don't think you need to stick a calendar date on it to visualize that risk. So even on here, if I said 11 days remaining plus or minus 50, rather than 4 days remaining plus or minus 1, you can absolutely see the difference between those two claims. So I think what the best way to interpret that is to say what you think the contingency would be. But yeah, cool. Okay, I'm glad I got to talk about that, Gary, because yeah, I don't think dates are the best way to articulate risk. So raised charts and tables of data showing how highly likely something is going to happen. That's a good way to do it. And in fact, there's a good point to make here. If something is highly likely to happen, or more likely than other risks in your project, and they have a significant impact if they happen, they're the ones that you want to be discussing all the time as teams. And it shouldn't be one individual or one team who is concerned about that risk. Like if there's multiple stakeholders involved in this, they all need to be involved in thinking up alternative approaches. Because yeah, if something slips, and it could slip by 50 days, that's a big problem. Monique?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Adam, for the sharing so far. I do have a question regarding, I definitely, I'm an advocate of using burn up chart or burn down charts, that sort of thing. I'm also thinking of sometimes the reason why we as consultants or we as delivery teams are asked to provide a date. I think partially it's because of the commercial aspect. So for example, the client's commercial team would like to know, okay, when are you guys going to finish the contract, and what will be the output out of that contract within that time period? And also, like back to our companies or our consulting organization, when do we think we will be able to finish the contract, because there would be other resourcing complications that we need to think about. So have you come across these situations, and how did you or your team or your organization manage to do these?
That's a really good question, and I wish I had better answers for it. But ultimately, I work for a company called Digital, and we want to work with clients. And what clients want is they want to pay for a thing and get that thing that they paid for. And in reality, sometimes you start working on the thing, and the thing that they want isn't what they've asked for. So we do need to flex and identify what the thing is that they really need, as well as what the thing is that they've asked for. And it's difficult because when you're estimating for one piece of work and then it turns out to be another piece of work, it's a really difficult conversation. So the only thing you can do is a lot of discovery up front, and then start trying to release something of value early, so that if the client gets cold feet, they can walk away and still have something of value, rather than having to wait until the end and then discovering it's not quite right, and asking for change requests, and all those sort of the part of the job that nobody likes. The client doesn't like it, the provider doesn't like it. So if you can get into the mindset of deliver something useful up front, then deliver something even more useful, even if it's only a smidgen better, and try to get that negotiation to a time and materials thing, and then leave it to the client to say, do we want to be working with this organization for another 2 weeks? Internally, if they're sponsoring a team to do it, like the way I see it is you should absolutely be funding your teams to do great things. So if you have the budget, you're taking bets on teams. So I would prefer to take small bets than big bets myself. So absolutely, I would be looking for the quick wins around the teams that are heading in the direction that I want to go. And challenging the teams to really break the work into smaller things. So it shouldn't be you as the main sponsor deciding how to break the work up. You want to set the vision and the direction, and allow the teams to say, okay, I think because of this vision that you've set, I think we can get, maybe you want 7 million more customers in the system. Well, I would think by the end of this week, we can get 2,000 more. And if that works, I reckon we can get 4,000 more the next week. Then it's up to the team to work out how they do that. And it becomes constant negotiation, but it's more on how we get better at delivering good things than how do we hit these deadlines, because if you don't, we're going to get upset and we have to talk to somebody else in management. Like, engage on the actual value.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah. And before we go into maybe the last 1 to 2 questions, just, Marianne has put the link for the survey to capture your feedback about the event tonight. So if you could just click on the link in the chat box, and you will be able to provide your feedback and help us improve our events moving forward.
Cool. And I live off feedback. So, I'm a big believer in any feedback helps me grow. So be as critical as you like. I can take it.
We don't have any more questions in the chat box. So it's an open floor.
So while we are waiting for questions to come in, just a quick advertisement. I hope you guys can see my screen. Our next event is scheduled towards at the end of October. We have got Graham from Agilist to share with us his view on how to apply business analysis skills in different roles moving forward, and how the future would look like. And I think probably you guys pick up the message that BA/ in general, as a community, we are not just promoting, or we are not just a group of business analysts. I set up the group is more because I believe in the business analysis skills are very useful for different roles out there. And I also want business analysts to learn more about different disciplines and apply it at work. So so this is a group for different roles, not just business analysts. And the event that Graham would be going to share with us and speak at, that's a very good example to showcase what the future would look like in terms of using business analysis skills. So yeah, so hope I'll see you there. Just to check again the chat box, do we have any questions? Okay.
No more questions.
Yeah, and I put another slide. So do get in touch if you would like to volunteer yourself to become an organizer, or have any topic suggestions and all these. I put those questions in the feedback form as well, so you can either email us or put your thoughts in the survey form. This is a community for everyone. We need your support to keep it going. And if we do have further questions, I will still be around to do some kind of breakout discussions if anyone is interested in that, or just quiz me on the Mid-Autumn Festival. Yeah, feel free to get in touch on LinkedIn, connect with Adam, follow us on social media and all these. Last but not least, thanks so much, Adam, for presenting at our event. I think we definitely learned a lot in terms of the way to present progress or present estimation to the management team to think about how they can do resourcing together, or what the client should expect things to get done as well. So that's a really good sharing. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining the section, and I'll see you at the next event. Have a very good day or evening, wherever you are.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Great session. Thanks, Adam.
Yes.